Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Game Things. I'm your host for the week, Ming, and today we're going to start off our episode by talking about Gundam Evolution. So if you've never heard of Gundam Evolution before, it's basically a shooter-based game using Gundam characters. And at one point of time, it was quite popular because it's a free-to-play game and because Gundam was a pretty popular franchise. But unfortunately, despite the game being pretty popular upon release, the game has been confirmed that it will be shutting down on the 29th of November this year. But even though the game is shutting down in November, the game will still be receiving updates until it shuts down. So Season 6 of Gundam Evolution will be released on the 23rd of August, and Season 7, the final season, will be released on the 25th of October. Any sort of premium currency will no longer be available for purchase, so you guys that have previously spent money and has the intention to continue spending money, you guys will unfortunately or fortunately be unable to do so anymore. Moving on, we're gonna talk about High on Life. So High on Life is a game that was brought to you by the creators of Rick and Morty, and it features some pretty interesting characters because those characters are your weapons, and they're a lot like Rick and Morty characters. They talk with a very weird sense of humor. So overall, it's a pretty weird game, but it is very interesting, and it actually has a pretty interesting premise that not a lot of other games out there have. So speaking of High on Life, it will be available now on PS5 and PS4. So if you've never played it previously on PC, you can now play it on, well, PlayStation. So yeah, if you previously saw gameplay footage of it or are just in general interested based on my short introduction, then I would encourage that you guys go and check it out. Next, we're talking about Mortal Kombat 1. So Mortal Kombat 1, which is releasing soon in the future, has confirmed that their first DLC characters will include some pretty cool characters, including Omni-Man from Invincible, Quan Chi, Peacemaker, Ermac, Homelander from The Boys, as well as Takeda, which, well, Omni-Man and Homelander is actually pretty surprising given that they are completely unrelated to NetherRealm Studios, so yeah. I am also at the same time really excited to see these two characters because they are really brutal and it really fits the theme of Mortal Kombat. And based on what has been showcased so far for Mortal Kombat, the gameplay is crisp, so with these two characters being added on, it'll be a ton of fun. Moving on, we're going to talk about Armored Core 6. So Armored Core 6 reportedly will have support for up to 6 player PvP. Now, 6 player PvP here doesn't mean 6v6, instead it's really just 3v3. But regardless, 3v3 is still pretty good, especially if you guys heard the most recent League of Legends update, which is the Arena mode. So this Arena mode features a 2v2v2v2 type of gameplay and is a lot like TFT, where every X number of rounds you kind of pick an augment like in TFT, and those augments give you various abilities and it basically shakes up the gameplay by a lot. And yeah, so far I would say that I have played a bit of the arena mode and it seems pretty fun, and I would highly suggest that if you guys have not played League in a hot minute, actually go and check League out. So yeah, with that in mind, I would say that 3v3 for Armored Core 6 is actually not bad because, hey, Riot did 2v2v2v2 and it worked well, so who's to say 3v3 is a bad thing? Moving on, we're going to talk about Blizzard. So, Blizzard games will be available on Steam, starting off with Overwatch 2, which will be releasing on the 10th of August. I guess it's cool, especially if it comes with achievements and stuff like that. Personally, I don't play Overwatch 2 that much. I kind of play Hearthstone Battlegrounds a bit more. So I do wish that they move Hearthstone over just because I like Steam. Steam is easy to use, Steam has a lot of achievements, and it would be nice to collect Hearthstone achievements on Steam. So yeah, I would really love to see Hearthstone on Steam, but unfortunately, presently, the only confirmed title coming to Steam is Overwatch 2, so, well, we're gonna have to wait a little bit, I guess. Next, we're gonna talk about a rumor. So, this supposed rumor is, well, RE9. They supposedly plan to release Resident Evil 9 sometime in 2025. But of course, it's just a rumor, so don't take it to heart. But honestly, based on the trends that we've seen for Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, 2025 seems pretty solid, because what is most likely going to happen is they'll probably do Resident Evil 5 remake, then only they do Resident Evil 9. So yeah, 2025 looks like a pretty good timeline for Resident Evil 9. Next, I'll be talking about Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So Marvel's Spider-Man 2 just only released their story trailer, and it basically gave us a glimpse of how the story will go, basically. So Marvel Spider-Man 2 will be very similar to the original Spider-Man 3, because what's gonna happen in this story is that Harry Osborn is introduced, Peter Parker gets his Venom suit, and well, somehow, some reason, Miles Morales is there as well. So yeah, the story basically is kind of focused on Harry Osborn, Venom, as well as, well, Kraven. So far, none of the Spider-Man games have disappointed at all. So I would say that, fingers crossed, Marvel Spider-Man 2, when it's released, will definitely be a banger, and you should definitely pick it up on its release. And of course, if you have not played any of the previous titles, I highly suggest checking them out as well, because those two titles are really great games that you can definitely enjoy as well. Moving on from Spider-Man, I'm going to talk about the Crew Motorfest, because the Crew Motorfest recently had brand new gameplay footage. So personally, I'm not too big of a racing game fan, because to me, irregardless if it's Forza Horizon 5, The Crew, what do you call that game? Need for Speed, to me, they're basically all the same. It's just a racing game. So yeah, when I saw the gameplay footage for the Crew Motorfest, I thought it actually had a pretty interesting concept, because aside from being a generic racing game like Forza and featuring, beautiful visuals as all other racing games do, the Crew has a rather interesting mode, because they have a Battle Royale mode. And yes, Battle Royale, everybody has heard of Battle Royale over and over again over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and it's kind of getting boring right by now, but still, I would say the Crew Motorfest's Battle Royale is quite different. Why? Because, for one, it's not a shooting based game. For two, you're using cars to bang into other cars, so it's more of a you hit me, I hit you type of thing, which is pretty different compared to a lot of battle royale games out there. It's not every day you see a battle royale for racing games, you know? Anyway, moving on from that, we're going to talk about our last and final piece of news covering Pokemon Sleep. So, Pokemon Sleep was just released last week, and I would say so far, it looks pretty interesting. I've tried it out myself, and well, it seems pretty fun. I mean, you don't really do too much for the game itself, aside from, well, sleeping. But I would say that it's very interesting, because you get to see how you kind of sleep, and at the same time, it kind of encourages you to sleep earlier, because the more you sleep, the more benefits you can get. And in general, it just kind of promotes a healthy lifestyle. And of course, the Pokemon that is featured in Pokemon Sleep are all extremely cute. So if you have a soft spot for cute things, I would say that it's definitely a good game to actually try out, because it doesn't really cost anything at all. There's no cost, and you don't even have to do much. All you have to do is just plug your phone into like a power socket and just leave it on when you sleep. So aside from costing electricity, it really doesn't cost anything at all. So yeah, I would say if you have not tried Pokemon Sleep out yet, I would actually suggest trying it out, just because it's something different, it's something new, and most importantly, it doesn't consume any time at all, and it's good for your health. So yeah, no harm, only positives. So, moving on from all the news that we have for this week, I'm going to talk about games that you can get your hands on right now. Starting off with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which originally was on the PS5, is finally out and available on PC. So, I personally have never really played Ratchet and Clank at all, but I do know that there are a ton of fans for Ratchet and Clank, and I would say that a lot of you out there definitely love Ratchet and Clank, and most likely might not be able to afford a PS5, or just hasn't gotten a chance to purchase a PS5. So this is basically the perfect time and the perfect opportunity for you guys to play this brand new title on your PC, and you guys can enjoy it to your heart's content. Next, we'll talk about Remnant 2, available on PS5, Xbox Series S and X, as well as PC. So, Remnant 2, what exactly is it? Remnant 2 is the sequel to Remnant from the Ashes. And Remnant 2, as compared to Remnant 1, is actually pretty different because there's way more customization options. Compared to before, your build is kind of fixed, like some things work, some things don't work, and it's pretty rigid. But compared to Remnant 2, they have vastly changed up the gameplay, so when you play with other people, you can feel that the game can be insanely fun and insanely crazy because you can stack a lot of different type of perks and you can just melt bosses down, so long as you're not playing solo. Well, don't get me wrong, solo can still get the job done, but this type of games are meant to be played with more people just because more people makes it more enjoyable because you can do all sorts of crazy things. But regardless, if you're just looking for a new game to grind, maybe if you're bored of Destiny 2, like my editor who has been playing Destiny 2 for ages, and you just want to try like a brand new game to grind, maybe give Remnant 2 a shot. Okay, moving on, we're gonna talk about The Expanse, a Telltale series available on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, and PC. So, as you might have heard, Telltale series. Based on the name itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a choose your story based type of game. And personally, I would say choose your story based type of games, they are in general pretty fun. Sure, they don't have too much replayability because once you've unlocked all the endings, that's pretty much it. But irregardless, it's still a pretty good time because in general, it's like watching a long ass movie, and the fun part is you choose how the ending goes. Anyway, if you are interested in Telltale games, I would suggest giving it a shot. Anyway, moving on to the last and final title that I'll be talking about today is Double Dragon Gaiden Rise of the Dragons, available on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So Double Dragon Gaiden Rise of the Dragons is a beat 'em up game. So if you don't know what a beat 'em up game is, it's basically, think of arcade games, but you just beat those characters up. So like Metal Slug, but instead of shooting, you punch and kick things. The best example that I can give you is the most recent Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. So yeah, it's basically a beat 'em up game, but instead of actually just playing as one character, you play as a duo. You play as, well, technically not really a duo. I guess what happens is you will still play as one single character, but you have the ability to tag out into another character, which in most cases will have a different playstyle compared to the other character that you chose. So it basically has some pretty interesting variations in how you beat up your enemies. And like the olden Mega Man games, you can kind of choose how you want to progress the game. So Double Dragon Gaiden actually features up to four main bosses. At least that's what has been showed thus far. And you can challenge these four bosses in any order. Just that once you challenge said boss first, the subsequent bosses will slowly increase in difficulty, which leads to, well, good progression because you can freely choose which bosses you want to tackle first, and in general it gives the player more control on how they want the game to play out. Because let's be real, right? A particular boss that you have fought before a couple of times, you find this boss really difficult and you want to get him or her like cleared off at the very start of the game, you can do so with Double Dragon Gaiden because while the opponent's weak, just quickly get rid of them. So this type of non-linear progression is really nice, and I think that a lot of other games should have this type of progression as well, where the players can freely choose how they want to progress the game. So in general, I would say if you like arcade based games, Double Dragon Gaiden is definitely worth your time. But otherwise, I would say it's a game that's easily passable because it's not a triple A game and it's not like a really hyped up release. So it really depends on what type of game you're looking for. If you just want to like have a short and fun arcade game session, then this game is basically perfect. Now we move on to our last and final segment, free things. So this week, Epic Games Store is giving out Homeworld Remastered Collection as well as Severed Steel. So be sure to get these two games before it's no longer available. And that basically marks the end of our episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And once again, I'm your host for the week, Ming, and we'll see you guys on next week for another episode of Game Things.